Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Trevor. And today, Kyle caught up on cinema. So today, I had Kyle watch a sci-fi slash horror film from 1985 by the name of Lifeforce, directed by Tobe Hooper, and a product of the Canon Film Group.
I saw the Canon logo come up, and I'm like, oh, Canon. Um, yeah, based on the book The Space Vampires.
Yeah, I don't actually know when the novel was written, but so many elements of the script in this movie, it's so totally bonkers and off the wall that it has the feel of like a dime store, like a drugstore, like cheapo sci-fi novel or something that somebody read in their childhood and was like, oh man, we gotta make a movie of that.
Yeah, it's kind of L. Ron Hubbard-ish. Like, it seems like because he just did those, like, I guess it's called Pulp Fiction, where it's just kind of like, yeah, it's about 150 pages. It's not very good, but you can read it.
Well, yeah, it's something to pass the time. So it's just an escape from reality for however many minutes it lasts. But this movie, it's trashy as all hell. I mean, it's a Canon product,
Oh yeah.
for sure. But what's fascinating about it, to me anyway, is that it was like them attempting to make an actual legitimate blockbuster film, because it is not a cheap film by any means. Maybe in terms of like casting, they may have cut a few corners here and there. There's no like super big names in there at the time, anyway.
I was gonna say at the time, I'm like, this was pre Next Generation because Patrick Stewart's in there.
Oh yeah, we have Patrick Stewart as an insane asylum like head doctor or whatever.
Yeah, like the head psychiatrist.
Dr. Armstrong.
I was expecting to see a lot more of him, and he's almost playing his same character from Conspiracy Theory.
Actually, yeah, that is kind of funny. You point that out, but yeah, this was Canon like dumping a shit ton of money and resources into a script that I don't think it was warranted. Like, if you're gonna pick a script to make a big budget like blockbuster to compete with like the Star Warses of the world, this is not the script to work from.
Well, no, like the first 10 minutes are captivating. Like they start off really, really strong in this movie.
Well, you want to talk about the starting point. I think it goes without saying that we need to talk music, because the main theme of this film is actually one of my favorite musical themes, like maybe in all of cinema, just because it's really powerful and kind of like it feels like a warm blanket. Like, I mean, if you've never heard the theme, you listeners out there, it's a dun 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 dun. It sounds like the old football music that they used to play during all the old promos.
No, yeah, I know exactly. I think they still use that for college games. Actually,
oh yeah, they absolutely do. But it was composed by Henry Mancini, who's like one of the legends in film composition. I know him mostly for the late '60s Romeo and Juliet movie that they made us watch in grade school.
Yeah, nope.
And the Pink Panther. That iconic theme is his doing. That'd be the one.
Okay, that one. Okay.
But yeah, the first thing we get in this movie is his music and like a shot of the surface of the moon or something, and then a swooping title.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to me, even more so than like seeing the actual Canon logo, just that ballsy title sequence kind of spells it out to you, the viewer, that we're watching a product of Israel.
See, I had to look it up real quick. So I'm like, what year did this come out? And it said 1985. I'm like, I thought it was 1975, honestly, from the title.
Well, Tobe Hooper, he went on record saying that he was given quite a bit of creative freedom, like during production, and he was even quoted as having said, like, he had Hammer Films in the back of his mind when he was making this. And I mean, it really shows, especially in the climax in the fucking church, in the cathedral, and the trashiness, like all the nudity and stuff like that. But
there was a lot of it.
Oh yeah, there is quite a lot of nudity. But yeah, it does. It's kind of like Showgirls in the sense that this is like absolute trash material, but they're attempting to add class to it by throwing money at it.
Well, definitely in the first 15 minutes, there's a lot of money into it
Oh yeah.
because it's a. I think did all that just go into that set design from the very beginning?
Oh, that set is gigantic. You're talking about
huge.
the interior of the alien
Yeah,
spacecraft.
yeah. Oh, do you want to give a rundown of the plot?
Yeah, sure. Let's give a little rundown. So,
Yeah.
as Kyle said, this script was adapted from a novel by the name of Space Vampires.
Yes. Yes.
So they changed a few details here and there. I mean, that I know of. I've never read the fucking book, but
No.
I don't think many people have. But so basically, the plot involves some literal space vampires. There's a gigantic spacecraft hidden in the tail of Halley's Comet. A joint UK and US space mission. It sends a shuttle up to investigate, just to, I guess, go into the comet, not expecting to find the spaceship. Anyway, our astronauts discover 3 humanoid people encased in some crystalline cases. Some shenanigans happen. They come back to Earth, and it's a race against time to stop the space vampires from doing whatever it is they're trying to do. And by the end of the movie, things escalate very quickly, and in very unexpected ways.
Yeah. The cast. I didn't recognize anybody except for one person, Patrick Stewart.
Uh-huh.
That was the only person I recognized. The main guy, the not Tommy Lee Jones, as I guess we could call him, he looked familiar, but I'm like, I just keep wanting to put him in Tommy Lee Jones movies. I don't think I actually do know who he is.
No, most of the cast, as far as I can tell, this was all filmed in the UK. There's only maybe a couple of American cast members. Our main guy, I don't even know the actor's name, but he's like Kyle just said, he does look like kind of a frumpy, tiny Tommy Lee Jones. Not a bad actor.
It looks like if Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden and Tommy Lee Jones were merged into one person.
Yeah, just give him a haircut. And
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
Yeah.
But he's basically the only American in the film. I'm not sure who dictated it, but he is treated as the main character, but he's really not. He's just kind of thrust into the center of the story, but in terms of moving the plot forward, he's not really the guy who does it. He's just the guy wrapped up in all the trauma.
Honestly, the person moving the plot forward is he has my favorite line in the movie, which we'll get to. But he's the one who has the most distinguished English accent in the whole film. The guy with the long white hair, the main.
Oh, Dr. Falada.
Yes, there you go.
Dr. Falada just cracked me up. He knew what fucking movie he was in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's a veteran of Canon films or Hammer films for that matter, but he knew he was in a movie adapted from a book called Space Vampires.
Yeah.
He was chewing scenery left and right. There's even a part that I got a good chuckle out of where it's when we're still trying to figure out what the deal is with the humanoids that were taken from the spacecraft. So some shit is going down. Anyway, we're discussing the space vampires, and the doctor just casually takes a few steps to his left into the creepy light because he has some creepy things to say. So he's standing in normal light, and he's like, "Oh, just a second." And he just moves a couple of feet to his left, and he's like, "Ah, that's better. Now that I'm in the creepy light." And then he talks about being
in an ominous tone now.
Yeah, he apparently his field of study is thanatology, study of death.
Okay.
He's the most metal doctor there is.
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah,
James Dio was the dean.
So our story begins in space, with the shuttle. One thing I read up on the Wikipedia entry for this movie is that the space scenes were heavily truncated, and it's obvious. I didn't notice it the last time I watched this movie. I've seen it a few times, but this most recent viewing was the first time I noticed it. Man, the cuts, the edits are super fast paced.
Oh yeah,
there is no attempt to build suspense. We're just we gotta go. like if you have like 2001 in the back of your mind when it comes to like portrayal of like spacewalks and doing anything in space, because most things in your mind, you think of space, you think slow, methodical.
Yeah.
There is none of that in this whole movie, especially in the early goings. So the time it takes us to go from, oh, hey, there's a spaceship, to, oh, hey, we're in the spaceship is like 30 seconds.
It's pretty immediate. It does not take any time. Well, first he's looking at it. They decide to go. They're in it within, I think, like next frame. Like they're just already there.
No, they do it really in a slapdash way where it's all crossfades. So it's just like, oh, we don't need to show them traveling that 100 feet stretch. It's like, no, let's just cut ahead. It's like, even from the same angle.
I mean, this movie should be about 90 minutes long. This is 2 hours long. So if you were to stretch that out, this movie would be so long. And this wasn't popular for movies at that time, and especially not this kind of movie.
Well, it's a canon film, dude. like they're all about like get it done. These are the same people that released the Missing in Action films in reverse order because the second one had all the action. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, ah, shit, nobody's going to get on board with this franchise if we release the slow one first. Let's get all the action out there first and then tell it backwards. So yeah, patience and like methodical storytelling, they're not known for that. But what's funny about what you say about a 90-minute runtime, apparently the version that you and I watched, the 2-hour version, is the international cut of the film. Apparently the original U.S. theatrical version was 90 minutes.
Oh, really?
So the version that's widely available now is actually the extended version.
Oh, no kidding.
So it was probably 2.5 hours if they had kept all the space stuff in.
Well, the other thing is they might have spent too much money on the space sequences. That were like, yeah, we can't get 20 minutes out of this stuff. We can get 5. Maybe.
I think it was just maybe the producers just nudging Toby Hooper and saying, "You gotta hurry up, man! Like we gotta get to the boobs and we gotta get to the explosions."
Wait, why would we want to be looking at space stuff?
Yeah,
she's French. She's showing her boobs.
Yeah, for real, man. It's like come on. There's boobs in the next room. Let's just get to that room. It's like we don't need to know how we got there.
Maybe that was their thinking. They were just like, we don't really need to spend a lot of time in here. I mean, all the fun stuff's going to happen back on Earth anyway. So why do we need to be here for that long?
Yeah, all the stuff in space is very hurried, and in fact, they jump way ahead in the movie and revisit the space stuff several times to the point that it feels like why did we do it that way? Why couldn't we have just told it all straightforward? But reasons, I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, the space cowboys. I don't know what that term means, but I'm just going to call the astronauts that. Space cowboys. They get into the ship, and they're tinkering around, and it looks kind of like xenomorphs have taken over a little bit. That's what the inside kind of looks like. Not as gooey or grimy, but that kind of looks like something has gone over the walls, and they there's a beaming light coming from somewhere in the inside the ship. Meanwhile, there is a huge tentacle thing coming out from the outside of the ship, from what I can understand.
Yeah, it's almost like a claw. So this spaceship is supposed to be like 150 miles long.
It's shaped like a neuron. That's how it's shaped.
That's actually pretty accurate. So at the one end of it is like a bulbous thingamajig, and then it has a very narrow middle section, and then the other end of it is shaped like a claw, like a literal like talon. Yeah. And the talons open up, and we have some awkward scenes in the shuttle. Like, so there's an away team who's investigating the innards of the spaceship, and then we also have
cowboys.
Yeah, the Space Scouts. And then we have the crew. They're still on the shuttle, and they're reporting to the people on the inside of the craft that something, we're not going to call it a claw, something
apparatus,
some apparatus is extending, and nothing comes of it.
No.
It's very awkward because you would think that like it's trying to grab the shuttle or something. No, it's just like the ship is yawning.
Yeah.
Yeah. The design of the ship, like Kyle said, does it does kind of remind you of Aliens, except for it's very brightly lit. It's a little bit more friendly in that sense. But it does have that like biomechanical look to it, where it's like this very easily could be the giant interior of a organism of some sort. In fact, there's a couple of like first-person shots that are very explicitly rendered to look like traveling through like an artery or something.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know what happens with the arm coming out, and I want to put a pin in that because also they said that it's at a certain point in the film they're like, oh, it's going over Texas for some reason.
Yeah,
yeah. It doesn't. There's no connection made from what I can gather. It could be
everything
wrong.
in this movie is very spastic, and
It's kind of hard to follow. Like
it is.
I when I started it, I was engaged. I'm like, okay, this is pretty neat because I liked the set design and I liked what was happening in the beginning. You get to so they go through the light and they go into this room. It reminds me of Land of the Lost with Will Ferrell when they go into that like mirror thing and there's that weird lizard the weird lizard thing. This room is just like it's like stacks of rectangular looks like glass cases basically, or like some kind of like design that you would see. I don't even know how to. It's hard to describe.
Well, I can help you out here.
There you go. Thank you.
Have you seen the live-action Super Mario Brothers?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, Koopa's Palace has these like geometric spikes poking out of the walls all over the place, and in fact, a design aesthetic that's borrowed directly from like the old Super Mario games. It brings to mind that kind of like diamond peaked geometric shapes lining the floor and the walls of this whole very expansive room. And
and then in the middle of it there are three glass cases, two fellas, and they're both naked, and then there's a lady and she's very naked, quite naked, and one of the astronauts even says, they're like, oh, I think they're human. He's like, oh, they're human. I've been up in that shuttle for a long time, and she's human.
What's especially awkward is that during his little they cut to a shot of a lady astronaut that just happens to be like overhearing all this.
But here's the other thing is that she's very attractive, and then the other astronaut lady, the ship's crew that's back there, she's very attractive as well. So I'm like, were you just being tortured by working with these two women, or were they just like chopped liver? Like,
I think it's the latter.
He's just like, gosh, and that's even the look she gives is like, she's like, whatever, dude. Like,
she's like, I'm right here, by the way.
Right here, bro.
But yeah, so we have our three naked space aliens. Before we got into this chamber, we actually had a whole room full of very awkwardly suspended corpses of these bat-like creatures.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I completely skipped that.
Yeah, right before they enter the chamber with the humanoids, there's several bat creatures that are suspended. Very obviously, they're like hung up by like fishing wire, but because this is supposed to be like a zero-G environment, they did their best. It was 1985, and you got to cut corners somewhere. But yeah, there's these gigantic bat organisms that are all dead. They're all desiccated. In fact, our lead space cowboy, the American, like yanks like a thumb right off of one without even thinking.
Yeah, that was super stupid. Like, why would you touch that?
Yeah,
I would never touch that.
It's the first fucking alien your entire civilization, your entire planet has ever discovered, and you just tore a chunk off of it with your bare hand.
You've got an alien spaceship full of Ozzy Osbournes just hanging upside down, and you're just gonna go over and crack its arm open, basically. Like, he doesn't make great decisions in this movie.
No, yeah, he's actually kind of shitty.
We'll get into him. He does some shitty shit in this movie. Yeah, and he's kind of our hero. Kinda. It's hard to tell.
Well, I feel I feel like he was shoehorned in as the hero, quote unquote, because he's the American. But everything he does is just ass backwards.
So, can I say something about this movie that while I was watching it, I was like, man, I'm getting like a Gamera feel or like a Godzilla feel to this movie, even though there's nothing remotely close to either one of those monsters in this movie. But the structure. So the structure, we get introduced at the very beginning. We're introduced to the alien spacecraft, these giant bats, and then these three naked people, and then we get back down to Earth, and we just get to like we do in Godzilla movies. We have to figure out what it is. Okay, we have to figure out where it's at now, which takes up like a big chunk of the movie, and then explaining like the one astronauts explaining what happened on the space station. And then we get kind of a bulky end of dealing with the monsters. So I think it kind of has like a Godzilla, how would you say that? Template, the Godzilla template.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I feel like maybe that's part of why I enjoy this movie. Is because I was raised on the fucking Godzilla. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Godzilla feels
comfortable. I don't know why, but
I can't quite put my finger on it. It's like Godzilla, but with boobs.
Yeah, with a lot of boobs.
But yeah, I mean, you need to remember that Godzilla and Gamera both had their heyday in the '60s, and Hammer films also in the '60s. Like B movies kind of had a flow to them, especially of the sci-fi variety. Like in the '50s and the '60s, your hero protagonist was generally like a burly science man and his second banana or whatever. And a lot of times production values were cheap to the point that you couldn't really show much of the monster or the alien invasion or whatever. So you had a lot of really exposition heavy scenes of just science people talking about...
there's exposition. Oh my goodness.
My god, there's a lot of exposition in this movie, especially from Dr. Falada.
Well, actually, the other thing I think when I realized it felt like a Godzilla movie is when the one guy is sitting in his office smoking and watching the television, which comes up in Gamera, and I think it comes up a couple times in a Godzilla movie, where the television is covering what's happening.
To me, that's like a useful tool that you'll find in any like high quality sci-fi horror movie of this type. It increases of this type. It helps increase the scale of the story. It lends it a sense of reality. Like Godzilla 2014, I always pointed to that as an example of that movie having more in common with the modern Gamera movies than Godzilla movies, because a lot of the storytelling is actually told just through talking heads, like news anchors and stuff.
Yeah.
While our hero characters are like all, doing their thing, they'll like turn their head to the side and see like, oh, like giant shadow or giant creature spotted in such and such town, and it's like, oh my god, the problem has escalated, independent of us, the protagonists, But
so yeah, so we move along, and so they're looking at them, and then do they say we're going to take them back to the ship, or do we even find that out at this point?
So there's something happens that causes our away team to need to hurry up. I think the spacecraft moving is an issue. So basically they have to hustle, they have to get back to the shuttle. They do so without incident. It's decided mostly by the American guy, our not so reliable protagonist.
No, I'm going to say he's unreliable.
Yeah, totally. It's decided by him that they'll take all three back to the shuttle, and then we cut to Earth, and it's UK like equivalent to NASA. And Dr. Bukowski, who has like the most grave demeanor I think I've seen in quite a while. He's always smoking and just looks like he's super constipated all the time.
He reminds me of the fella from Lethal Weapon 2. I think it's Derek O'Connor. I don't know. Maybe there's something about his face or his hair that reminded me of Derek O'Connor.
Well, I can't be positive, but I feel like he was one of the chief villains in one of the Roger Moore James Bonds.
He looks like it. He feels like that's exactly what he'd be.
No, he has a terrific look, but like his speaking voice is like very Christopher Lee, like, but even deeper. And he looks so just pissed and tired all the time.
He is in For Your Eyes Only.
Yep. That's the one with Topol.
He's in Frankenstein, 1992 Frankenstein. I don't even know about that.
Is that the TNT one with Randy Quaid? I'm not joking, dude.
We're doing a Frankenstein movie for TNT. Get Randy Quaid. Yeah, that is Randy Quaid.
Holy shit! I need to see that movie again because I saw it when it was on TV when I was a kid, and it was really fucking good.
See,
it's like, let's not talk about that.
That sounds awful. It sounds like an absolutely terrible movie.
It's really good, dude. You should find a way to watch it.
I didn't. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched this while drinking a little wine last night. I as you know, I flew back from Seattle on Monday, and then Tuesday I got a text from my brother saying, "Hey, my wife is being induced tonight." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to drive over to Louisville, which is a good 8.5 hours for me." So I drove 8.5 hours Wednesday, stayed the night, saw the baby on Thursday, went to bed, and then woke up Friday, drove all the way back. So I got in last night. And I got here, I'm like, all right, I got to watch these movies for tomorrow.
I got to watch these shitty movies.
But I was just so, just wiped out that I'm like, all right. And I had too much caffeine, so I'm like, I'm going to sip a little wine while I'm watching this. So I didn't write down the characters' names, so I am going to have my IMDb up here so that I can refer to them quickly, because I just didn't take great notes last night.
Good, because truthfully, I don't really know any of the actors in this movie. I just know them by their faces. So if you can fill in any blanks that I have, that would be really helpful. I do remember Bukowski, though, because that's a fucking name. And he struck me as like one of the more interesting characters in the movie. However, he is treated like fucking garbage in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loose threads in the storytelling in this film. We'll get to them, but yeah.
Dr. Fallada, I just thought, was a mixture of Peter O'Toole and David Warner. He just kind of had, he was just like a mixture of those two.
Don't compare him to David Warner.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that his look and voice, he just kind of, it was like those two guys just kind of melded into one.
If David Warner was in this, I would be so much more happy with it.
I would rather have. No, I really liked this guy. He had a great voice, and I just liked how he acted in this movie.
Like I said, he knew what kind of movie he was in, and he had fun with it. They even gave him a pointless extra scene at the end of the movie, just because it's like, yeah, we gotta do something with him.
So yeah, we're kind of getting introduced to our characters. Again, we said Dr. Fallada.
Dr. Bukowski and Fallada are both at the UK NASA, and they're in a bit of a panic because the shuttle is apparently on its way back to Earth, but the guidance system is not doing things correctly, so it's coming in at a bad angle. I hate to
use it again. I know we used it for Deep Rising, but it's kind of like Jurassic World, or not Jurassic World, but the Lost World Jurassic Park, where they're like, yeah, the ship's coming in, but we can't. There's no communication. Hauling ass towards the dock. But yeah, they can't communicate with them at all. There's nothing.
So they have there's a really cool edit in here where so that the name of the shuttle that is coming in that our space cowboys were on, that contacted the Halley's Comet spacecraft, is called the Churchill. I forget what the name of the second shuttle is, but we get this really cool edit where everybody's they're talking about options, how do we fix this problem of this shuttle coming in too hot? And then Bukowski just looks up and says, Washington. And he just says the name of the other shuttle, and the other person just nods, and then cut to a shuttle launching.
Yes. So they get that other shuttle up there, and this thing is it's not spinning like Matt Damon in space. It's just it's got a decent roll to it, and it's definitely going to be difficult for them to dock up, but they do it with no issues whatsoever. But this also isn't supposed to be a space movie. This is supposed to be a monster movie.
Yeah, the space scenes are clearly just like a means to an end, where it's like,
Yeah.
we got to get back to Earth so we can get to the boobs. And
Neil deGrasse Tyson would probably roll his eyes at most of this, like, oh no, it's not. It would take way longer.
To quote Kevin Spacey, he who we do not talk about anymore. Wrong.
Yeah, we don't talk about him anymore.
But yeah, so the secondary shuttle goes up. It very quickly docks with the other one, and we get some new space cowboys that go to investigate the Churchill.
Yeah, these guys are. I would have, as soon as I went in, I know it's kind of like a house burning down. Like we have to figure out how it started. But they get into this shuttle, and they open it up, and the movie Sunshine has happened inside. So it's okay. So if you're ever in space and you're like, these people aren't talking to us, we're gonna go up to their shuttle, and you open that door and there's just dust and ash, they're dead, because that's human. That's human skin all over the place.
That is an ex-person.
That's all you have to do is open it. Okay, it's all skin. Yeah, they're dead. Like they evaporated.
Just like stick your head in, like, yep, they dead.
They did.
And leave.
But no, they go in. And we get our first little bit of makeup effects. We get the dummies, all the dummy skeletons, basically.
Yeah, they're actually pretty grisly looking. Like
they're pretty good.
Some detail went into those burnt up corpses.
We get some more stuff later, which I think isn't even on par with Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
they were trying really hard, and I appreciated that. But I think either Return of the Living Dead did a little bit better, or that. What was the zombie movie you had me watch? It was a Romero.
Day of the Dead?
Say again?
Was that Day of the Dead?
I think it was Day of the Dead. It was the third one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Day of the Dead
Day of the Dead.
Far superior in terms of makeup effects.
Yeah.
That's not even fair.
But they were really trying. But yes, the first wave of makeup effects we get are pretty good. We got dead bodies everywhere. They look like they've been pretty much hit with a blowtorch or a flamethrower, like while inside the ship.
Oh yeah, everybody's quite crispy.
Mm-hmm.
So our space cowboys, they investigate. One of them pulls the flight recorder, which turns out to be entirely useless. I don't even know why they showed us that. Count that as like loose thread number one.
Mm-hmm. Loose thread.
There are so many.
There's a lot.
And then I think the scene concludes with one of our astronauts going into the cargo hold, where we find our three humanoid space vampires all in pristine condition, while the interior of the cargo hold has very clearly been singed and burnt very badly.
Pristine in one way. Pristine in more than one way, I guess you could say.
Did you happen to
French
catch?
actress is gorgeous. Like she's a bombshell.
Oh yeah, no, she was cast. I'm sure it was a rigorous casting process. Did you happen to catch the very strategically placed strap over her chest?
Oh, now we're gonna try modesty.
Yeah, it's like what the hell was the point of that modesty strap? We've already seen everything.
So when did you first watch this movie? I'm curious.
I think I was a teenager, probably like 18.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna say like 11 or 12.
No,
I
no,
bet
no.
you did.
No, that it would be my favorite movie if that was the case.
It's so good.
It's like, man, it's a cinematic classic.
It's a cinematic. Watch And God Created Woman. It's not a good movie, but my goodness, it's a teenage boy's favorite movie. Yeah.
And I believe we cut very hastily away from that, and we are back in the UK. We're back in London.
Back there. So there's a little bit of dialogue. Honestly, the problem with the British taking on the Godzilla template is that it's not as exciting. Japanese people speaking to each other it's not mumbled and quiet. Oh yeah, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna get the thing. Like Japanese people are speaking deliberately about what needs to happen next. So the the dialogue scenes in this are just so like I can't even pay attention because they're all British and shit.
Yeah, there are a lot of exposition scenes in this movie that it's basically just science people talking science back and forth, and not only that, but science people who mysteriously have answers that they really have no reason to have.
Yeah.
It's purely for the benefit of the audience, but it has the weird effect of reducing the scale of the story in a story that reaches like world ending stakes towards the end. But in the early goings, it's just kind of like a slow burn kind of mystery, and it feels like our central cast is composed of like just a handful of people. Like it starts out not feeling like a story that's going to touch an entire country. It just feels like it's going to be like, oh, the city of London, or just like a town or something. It feels like a small story that gets very big very fast.
Yeah. So wait, so now there's like talkie and
this is where we meet Dr. Filata, and we get a sense that he's kind of a weirdo. And then we have some like a surgical team kind of investigate or attempting to investigate the space vampires.
Yes.
And there's a there's a security guard posted up in the operating room, and I think is this when our female vampire wakes up?
Yeah, so I had trouble with this. Something happened. I was watching it. So yeah, Smokey guy is sitting in his office watching the monitor, and the team walks out of there except for this one guard. He stays in there, and yeah, this is where he goes in and he's just like hovering over her. And something happened when I was watching it, and it like skipped forward somehow, so I had to like try to rewind, and I'm using Prime on my TV, and the remote's a little wonky, so I got to like right there, but then right past that scene. So yeah, she basically wakes up over him, and then I don't know really what happened to him because it kind of skipped.
Well, let me explain. So he is compelled to approach her. It's very obvious that. Well, it's not immediately obvious, but there's a gorgeous naked woman like laying on a table, and she may or may not be alive. And this security guy just walks up to her and hovers over her, and he reaches out to touch her. And we get a few seconds of suspense building where he's wearing a gas mask, and you can hear his like labored breathing, and it's very creepy. You can tell he's in like a trance or something. And the second he touches her, her eyes snap open, and she's got these contacts in that are kind of like amber colored and have like a spiral shaped iris to them. It's kind of an interesting effect, especially combined with like the really pale makeup that they did on her entire body. And she gets up and she takes his mask off, and they make out.
Oh,
and then we get some really trippy and pretty cool looking optical effects of like it looks like a thundercloud and like a spiraling blue light hovering around them. It's like a halo of like blue spectral light. Goes without saying, Tobe Hooper also directed Poltergeist, and John Dykstra, special effects guru of this particular era of film, and maybe even to this day. He worked on this film, and if you ask me, he was like a major fucking get. For a trashy sci-fi movie to have him backing the special effects, like one of the leading pioneers in optical effects, that's a pretty big fucking get.
Well, do you know who the cinematographer was for this movie?
Tell me.
Because I was watching like there's interesting angles that they're using in here. Cinematographer was Alan Hume. You know him as the cinematographer for Octopussy, For Your Eyes Only, A View to Kill, and last but not least, Return of the Jedi.
Dang, that is quite a pedigree. So James Bond and Star Wars. Sure, I'd call that a talented individual.
Fish Called Wanda. He's got quite a few on here. There's some
cinematographers are kind of like makeup effects gurus. There's like a handful of them, of really good ones anyway.
Eye of the Needle, which from its poster looks like it's really good, but I don't think I'm going to watch it. I'm just saying, So she busts out of there, correct?
Yeah, so she literally drains the life from him, turning him into like a frail, desiccated corpse with bulging eyes. And which leads us to the makeup effects that Kyle was alluding to earlier, the not so great makeup effects. This is an effect that's used throughout a good chunk of the first half of the movie, is these desiccated corpses that they're vaguely zombie-like, but more so like shriveled and gnarly.
They look kind of like when Imhotep sucks off the skin of the guys in the Mummy '99.
Kind of.
The one of the first guys I remember, he was on the first guy he gets with the his eyes taken out when he's sitting in the chair. It kind of looks like that.
It's a shriveled corpse. The main difference though is that in this film in 1985, they tried to do these entirely through animatronics, as opposed to like using Doug Jones in a with makeup. Yeah. So it's entirely a remote controlled puppet or a wire controlled puppet, and it just isn't quite convincing. It doesn't help that it's supposed to be a shriveled corpse, and because of that, the eyes are really bulging and it looks very cartoonish. And just the articulation on like the upper body in particular, like there's a scene where one of these corpses reaches out to someone, and it just looks dopey.
That's the first one we see.
It's the same corpse, but a little later in the movie.
You can tell a lot of time went into it. I think a lot of time was spent on making them look okay. I think they get an A for effort, but I think even for 1985, it's not that great. There's definitely better examples.
No, there's in my notes that I took while I was watching this movie, the term overly ambitious comes up a few times, and this is an instance of that, where it's like, you probably should have just got Doug Jones's dad.
I think the difference is like I want to use like what is it, Day of the Dead as an example, or you could even use Return of the Living Dead, but the thing is there's kind of blood components to those, and in this movie I don't think that there's not any blood, and I think that might be one of the problems, is you can kind of cover up stuff if you're showing a little bit more gore, quote unquote, and in this case they're supposed to be like sucked. Basically they're supposed to be dry.
Well, it doesn't help too that they're also naked almost every time we see them, so every little flaw in like the joints and like the anatomy is very visible, and the lack of gore, and also some of the things that they tried to do with them, some of the motions. Like I said, there's a shot where this thing sits up, reaches out to someone. There's another shot where there's a female corpse laying on a table, like strapped down and trying to break free, and just the articulation isn't there. Whereas like Day of the Dead has that iconic shot, well, iconic to me, where the opening shot, or one of them anyway, is a corpse with like a divot like smashed into the front of it, just standing with the sun at its back, and it's not really moving, it's just stationary, but the facial animatronics are there and it looks good, but it's not like flailing around or doing any like exaggerated movements or anything. It's stationary.
The lady they found in the park, I think that when they bring her back to Area 51, whatever you want to call it, it's almost identical to the one in Return of the Living Dead with the lady on the slab.
Yeah, actually,
if you recall, it's almost identical, and that's what I was like thinking of when I was watching this, and like they kind of just set themselves up for failure because of that.
Yeah, because that scene, like Return of the Living Dead, does not have the best makeup effects, but that one in particular was done pretty well.
Yeah. All right, so we're moving along here. I was getting a Terminator vibe, and
very much so.
And it's interesting because Terminator came out a year later, while this was probably filming, while they were actually filming this, because this came out in '85, Terminator '84. So the two buff dudes that are, they look pretty similar.
Yeah, they're just like Tommy Hilfiger models or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
or Calvin Klein. Or
I was thinking they looked like they were kind of cut like Robert Patrick in T2.
Actually, yeah, may as well.
But they're moving just like him, and that's because the guards start shooting at these two guys because they wake up and they're supposed to be deadish or in a coma, And they start shooting him. I'm like, this looks a lot like Terminator. What's happening right now? But it looks more like Terminator 2, which hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, that scene actually happens a little later. What follows the lady vampire, our fine vampire lady escaping, is like the slowest on foot escape from a facility you've ever seen.
Like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
So Kyle pointed out that Dr. Bukowski happens to see the security guard get sucked dry by the female vampire on a monitor that he has, like a security monitor. His reaction isn't to like pick up the phone and call anyone. He decides to run down there. He actually gets to the room right when she's finishing up with the security guard, and she does something to him. I'm guessing sucks some of his energy.
Yeah,
she takes
something
some
like
of
that.
his energy, but not all of it. And then some other people watching other security monitors see him. Yeah, Dr. Falada sees him, and it becomes this farce where it's like, is everyone in this entire building going to end up in this room at some point?
Is anybody going to do anything about it?
So yeah, Dr. Falada sees Dr. Bukowski making out with her, and he's like, oh shit! And he runs down, except he's smart about it and gets like a whole team of dudes. And he runs into the room, and she's gone, and Bukowski's like worn out. And he's like, Dr. Falada asks him, like, what the hell happened? He's like, I don't know. For like the next 15 minutes, this lady is still naked, still wonderfully naked. Just like slowly walks out of the building and keeps running into male security staff who are just completely powerless before her.
Well, she's got the power of the fembots, basically. Like,
yeah,
kill
no,
these women.
She has the power of
no.
She has the power of flash bulbs and sound effects. Because she just like waves her hand, there's a flash of light, and people clutch at their chests and fall down.
She doesn't at this time, but now I looked her up. What she looks like now, she looks like Famke Jensen, actually. But she doesn't look like her at all in this movie.
Not a bad look for anyone at any age.
No. If you look like Famke Jensen, you're doing well. So yeah, she escapes, and
this is when the Colonel comes into the story.
Yes,
Colonel Curly Hair.
He's not Colin Firth. He is a Firth, though, but not related, I don't think. He is Mr. Peter Firth, Colonel Colin Kane. Yeah, I think that he's the only one that's. I mean, he has scenes where he's kind of being funny, but like when he. Okay. So at this point, she's escaping. The guards are coming up. And then we find the one astronaut. He's the one that took his escape pod from. He escapes from the ship, and I think that's where Texas comes up, maybe.
Yeah, that also comes a little later. It's actually quite a while before our astronaut gets reintroduced into the story. So the Colonel shows up at UK NASA, and he starts questioning Bukowski and Falada, and it's very. This is when Bukowski makes it clear that being in the room with this lady vampire was overwhelmingly sexual.
Very sexual.
It's very sexual, very sensual. So he was completely put in a trance by her, which explains what happened with the security guard. She has this power to just take over your instincts and force you to do things that parts of you probably really want to do, but not all of you.
Yeah, she's very attractive, and she's giving off a very down for it energy.
Yeah.
So that's a strong combination for these fellas.
Bukowski is like shell shocked, basically. In fact, he gets up and sits down multiple times in the scene, and it kind of made me laugh because what's his deal? If you're like a stage director or something, it's like, why are you doing that? It's like the blocking of this is driving me nuts. And this is also where we get that goofy shot I mentioned, where Falada steps into the creepy light, so he can tell Colonel Kane that I'm into death. By the way, you can totally trust everything I have to say.
So the motivations arc of our characters is the Colonel he's just trying to figure out what's going on and stop it. And it seems like Dr. Falada.
Falafel.
Dr.
Falafel.
I don't know if he wants. He's kind of the. I don't want to kill it. I want to study it.
Yeah,
Before,
very much so.
which you have to have one of those guys in one of these movies. So she escapes. Is this where the buff dudes come in?
This is where the buff dudes wake up and the two guards blow the fuck out of them.
Yeah, does nothing.
Yeah, this is what, loose thread number 2.
Yeah.
So we get a shot, and I can't help but feel that this was maybe a planning issue or a budgetary issue. So the two buff dudes wake up. There's a lot of glass that blows up in this movie. It's kind of cool. Like, anytime there's glass paneling, it gets blowed up real good.
Glass? Who gives a shit about glass? Who the fuck is this?
Good reference. So yeah, there's 2 security guards posted up. They have submachine guns and grenades. And the submachine guns do nothing. But the grenades apparently worked, because then we get a shot where Colonel Kane and Dr. Fallada walk into the room where the buff dudes were, and their eyes are downcast, like they're looking at the floor, and they do the thing like they did in Jurassic Park, where Muldoon and Dr. Sattler, they pull up in the Jeep post T-Rex attack, and Muldoon says, "I think this was Gennaro."
Yeah.
She in the background says, "I think this was Gennaro too." They do that beat where their eyes are looking in very different locations, and they're like, "Yeah, that's a mess we're not going to be able to clean up anytime soon."
Yeah.
So it's implied that they were blown to pieces.
Yeah.
They appear later in the film, but we don't see how they reform themselves or anything along those lines. They just appear later in the film. So that is major loose thread number 2.
If you've seen Little Monsters, it's probably how the big dude, the big monster, the scary one, he puts himself back together. It's literally his pieces of meat, just like, I gotta put myself back together. I'm guessing they just came back. They just scooted themselves back together.
Well, I would have liked to have seen that, but we didn't get it. So
Don't tell.
Yes, and I think around this time is when we discover the lady corpse.
Yes.
So it is. We get a phone call from the local police, and they call Colonel Kane out to the site, and it's like at a park or something.
I keep wanting to say Colonel Kurtz, but yeah, Colonel Kane.
Colonel Kane. He goes out to meet up with the cops, and there's a shriveled female corpse in the middle of a park, completely nude. And it turns out the call was placed by a couple of teenage boys who were they called the cops because they found the body, but before that they were hovering around this lady because they thought they were going to watch a couple of lesbians make out.
If I was to watch Space Girl walk into the park butt naked and then just like go up to another chick, I'm like, let's see how this plays out. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't need to call the cops just yet. I mean,
they're very frank and honest with the cops. They're like, yeah, we circled around a couple of times and she didn't have too much clothes on.
We're like, if we thought they were going to start doing stuff, we were going to get a show, you know.
Yeah.
And then she looks.
Yeah, she looks like the worst example of a Holocaust victim you've ever seen.
It looks terrible. Yeah, she does not look good.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the spoiler alert at the beginning of True Detective starts out. Is they find a corpse of a girl, not at a park, but it just kind of jumped back at me when I saw it. I'm like, oh, kind of is how True Detective starts. But so we take her back, obviously, because we have to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, but in between this, we get, I think this is when the pathologist makes out with the corpse.
The pathologist makes out with the corpse. So yeah, I think that happened when I skipped over too.
Oh wow,
that was before this, but I think that kind of got cut out.
So this is where like one of the major plot points that again kind of gets tossed out the window in this movie pretty quickly, but it is major, enters into the picture. So our security guard corpse, desiccated corpse. We have a team of like a surgical team. They're investigating. They're like trying to examine this corpse and get a sense of what the fuck just happened. And when this corpse is on the operating table, it gets up and it sits up and it like looks longingly into the eyes of the man who I guess is performing the autopsy. So one of the surgical team, and we have these lingering shots back and forth of them just like looking at each other and like going, ooh, like doing like Zoolander looks or something.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And then the doctor embraces the corpse and attempts to like give him a smooch, and then we get that familiar blue swirling light effect, and suddenly not suddenly actually, this takes like a good solid fucking minute. The corpse fleshes out, so it like plumps up and comes back to normal while the doctor shrivels up.
Yeah.
So they like transfer life force, I guess.
So instead of sucking blood, they're basically sucking the skin or life force out of this other person.
Yeah, they're sucking blue energy out of each other.
Yes, and he comes back to life, and he's freaking out. He does not know what's happening at all. He not doing a very good job acting about it. But yeah, he's freaking out. So they're like, we have to get him the fuck out of here. So this is where they put him down in the cage, basically. Yes. And then there's the other guards in the there's another cage down there as well.
Yeah, we get two scenes of these corpses back to back. Actually, it's kind of silly. So another gentleman is called onto the team. He's like a chancellor or something. I don't know. He has a bow tie. Funny. The only thing I recognized him from was Bordello of Blood, the Tales from the Crypt movie.
Yeah, see, I just like his bow tie. I'm like, why does he have a bow tie? Where was he at?
Like I said, I think he's like a politician or something.
Okay.
But, yeah, he's a goofy little goblin-looking guy that has like one permanently half-closed eye. He reminds me of Egg Shen from Big Trouble in Little China, but British.
Yeah, you're right.
He has like a horribly insincere look about him, where it's like, I can't trust anything you fucking say, man. You look like you're winking at me all the time. But anyway, Colonel Kane takes him into the basement to examine these two corpses. Well, no, the security guard is normal now.
Yeah. Was normal, but now he's not normal.
Dr. Filata points out that 2 hours had passed since the security guard was drained and when he reanimated. So they put that to the test, and sure enough, 2 hours later, the security guard goes back to his corpse state and completely dies and becomes dust, basically. Mm-hmm. And then on that same timetable, the pathologist, the person that he had drained, goes from corpse status and reanimates, and then attempts to like run at them. So think like a Reaper from Blade 2. Like It's just like uncontrollable urge, need fluids, need blood. And he runs at them, and he explodes into dust when he hits the bars.
Yeah, it gets in their mouths too. They're like,
oh yeah, it's not a pretty sight.
Okay, so this is after this guard hits the cage, we find out that the main astronaut, not Tommy Lee Jones, has we recovered an escape pod somewhere around Texas, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And this is where the Colonel kind of kicks in a bit more, and this is where I was talking about where he's kind of in a different movie. So they get the astronaut back down, and he's in his gear, and he's in this meeting with the two doctors and the Colonel. And the Colonel is like, he's very analytical, like he's very good in this scene, like he's being very serious, and he's like, "Won't you just start from the top? Don't hold back on anything." Like he kind of looked like he was like the bad guy. He kind of seemed like a Nazi almost, like when he was saying that. Honestly,
based on his look, I could totally see him playing a Nazi at some point.
He's got the blonde hair and kind of the haircut. But yeah, this is where the astronaut explains what happens.
Yeah, directly preceding that, we get it. Colonel Kane has a pretty cool line in there. I can't remember it verbatim, but basically the astronaut is attempting to pussyfoot around things. Like, he knows some fucked up shit happens, but he doesn't know what they know. So he's like, "Oh, you guys won't believe what I have to tell you." And Colonel Kane's like, I think I'm fully prepared to believe pretty much anything you tell me right now. Yeah. So it's like kind of winking at him. It's like, we've seen a lot in the past 6 hours.
Humor me.
Yeah, humor me. So yeah, our not Tommy Lee Jones recounts the events that happened on the shuttle after we left them. It's kind of an interestingly edited sequence because it's all there's no real sound or anything. It's all just footage of him and the other astronauts on the shuttle, and the score, very good score, and his voiceover, like recounting the tale. So basically what happens is one by one all the astronauts are being discovered on the shuttle, like shriveled and rendered into corpses, basically. And it's the way I understood it, nobody even really gets a sense of why it's happening. But over some stretch of time, eventually not Tommy Lee Jones becomes the only survivor on the shuttle. And we get a kind of a chilling shot where he's like in the living area of the shuttle, so like where all the bunks are, and there's just like stacks of body bags and shriveled corpses, and he's just like sitting in the corner by himself with a beard, and he just looks so lonely and depressed. And again, he brings up, like Bukowski had before, that he feels like this uncontrollable like pull to the space vampires in the cargo hold. And so he decides to destroy the shuttle and escape via the escape pod. So he like sets the autopilot to basically crash, and he probably should have set it to go off just randomly into space, but whatever. And then he sets fire to one of the desiccated bat corpses that they had brought on board also, which sparks a flame, which I guess ignites the whole interior of the shuttle. And he takes off in the escape pod, and which brings us to him back on Earth. So his plan failed, basically.
Yeah. His name's Carlson.
Carlson. I like not Tommy Lee Jones better.
Yeah, I'm like, there's got to be a shorter name. Well, Tom Carlson, but Carlson's just easier.
Oh, yeah, Carlson. It's kind of hard to forget now that I remember the finale of the movie, because Colonel Kane yells it like 50 times. Carlson.
I wrote down cockblock down in my notes.
No, verbatim. Me too. I said cockblock to save the planet.
Cockblock. That's exactly what it was. He's ignoring the hell out of him too. He's just like. So anyway, so he tells them all this stuff, and they're like, okay, well, we have to go find the girl. They're like, why don't you go get some rest or whatever?
Yeah.
And he's going to get some sleep, and in his dream, homegirl comes up, and she's just all like getting him, basically doing foreplay on him. We can just put it that way. And it's getting pretty hot and heavy here for a little bit, because I think this is where they're in like I want to call it the Legend sequence, where it looks like it's from the movie Legend.
Yeah.
And they're just on a bed, and
it looks like something out of a Meatloaf music video or something.
Yeah, there we go. That's what it is. It looks like something from a Meatloaf music video. And it's turning into a Cinemax production here pretty quickly, and he ends up waking up screaming, completely soaked in sweat. She's like whispering sweet nothings to him, like, oh, don't you want to love me and stuff like that? I love you. And they come in and they're like, what's up? And he's like, she was right here. I'm like, well, she wasn't, because we were watching you sleep. Like, you were just having a bad dream.
Because that's normal. I wasn't watching you sleep. That's not two-way glass.
And then Falada comes up and he's like, have you ever been hypnotized?
Yeah, I know. He just like very immediately pulls that out of his ass.
No, he's like, okay, we'll do that in a minute. So they hypnotize him, and they find out that he can see where she's going. He is somehow kind of what is his stupid name in Harry Potter?
That's all you, bud. I know nothing about Harry Potter.
I can't say that. I can't spoil it for you. But anyway,
sure
he's able to access what she's doing. They're kind of connected somehow.
Yeah,
like
they have a psychic link of some sort.
So he's watching her, and she's a different person. He's like, I see her. And you're like, well, where is she? She's wearing clothes, and she's a different girl. and she basically is just walking through a vague UK countryside. Comes up on this dude changing a flat or something, and she just stares at him. And she's attractive. She's not space girl attractive, but she is attractive, and especially for this guy because he's older. And she just walks over to the passenger side and just gets in. He's just like, "Oh," he keeps looking around because if this ever happens to you, you're about to get hit in the head.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You're about to get jumped by her brothers.
Yeah, like there's somebody waiting to shoot you or stab you. He's just
Johnny from the Cobra Kai is watching.
But she doesn't, and he's still like they're driving, and she's just kind of looking at him, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's explaining what's happening to them. He's like, "Well, now he's touching her leg, and it's going up." Basically, the next part of the softcore porn is about to kick in, and then we cut out of that. Basically, like I don't really know what happens with those two.
Yeah,
but we learn. Go ahead.
The main information that we get that keeps the chase going is that they ask him, "Can you see the man's license plate?" And he gives it to them, and there's like a weird little detail that, again, it's kind of extraneous. I don't know why it's there, but he misreads the plate, but then he corrects himself like immediately. Yeah,
that I noticed that too.
It's like that didn't contribute anything. That would have been kind of interesting if he threw them off the trail or he did it intentionally or something, but it's just a weird detail that's in there for no reason.
Well, I mentioned all that softcore porn stuff because it happens quite a bit in this movie. It comes back quite often, and I'm not really quite sure what it's there for. You could have just gone by like, oh, she's just so riveting as she is, just on her own. But no, she's very sexual in nature. I think there's a difference.
Well, I feel like it comes from like again the B movie background, because one thing that Hammer films were noted for in the '60s anyway was the sexuality aspect of it. Like they were racy by the day's standards, and I feel like when you get into the mid '80s, standards have changed, and in order to maintain that vibe, in order to have this like trashy and classy vibe at the same time, you need to make it trashier. I guess
we've had Halloween, Cannibal Holocaust. Let's see what else has come out by this time. Friday the 13th, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Good point.
Things have escalated, you know, in that 20-year gap. So I feel like it's paying homage to that vibe, but just pushing things even further down the line. So I believe it's through the license plate that we get to the criminally insane. Yeah, the asylum for the criminally insane.
No, we get to the girl first. They track down the girl.
Yeah, isn't she at the asylum?
She's at a home. She's at like an apartment. And they like, "Hey, can we come talk to you?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And they go upstairs, and she answers the door in a robe, and she's like, "What do you want?" And the colonel's like, "We want to ask you a few questions. May I sit?" She doesn't say yes. He's like, "Okay, I'm just going to sit anyway." And this is where Carlson is like, "She's in there. I know she's in there." And this is where it gets a little weird. He starts like he slaps her once. He's like, he's giving her like crazy close eye contact, just trying to draw her out.
He's got he's shaking her vigorously.
Yeah, very, very much. And she's like, "Are you going to stop this?" And the colonel's like, "Actually, I'm quite voyeuristic."
Yeah, he pulls up a seat and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is when Carlson mentions that. This is when he flexes his psychic powers. Psychic powers that until that point we didn't really know he had.
Yeah.
So he is holding this lady and he's staring very intensely into her, and he's basically just verbalizing to the room, not explicitly to Colonel Kane, but he's just verbalizing that this woman is an extreme masochist. She wants me to hit her.
Yeah, that was a really weird. line.
Yeah, and then he yanks off her robe and he like spins her around just so he can see that she has like scrapes on her back. So
Yeah, I did not know that's where that was going to go. I thought it was going to go someplace completely different. Considering the tone so far, I'm like, what is he about to do to her?
you sure you don't want to leave the room, Colonel?
Yeah, okay, seriously. But yeah, I don't know what really happens here other than that. They kind of figure out what.
This is when he uses his psychic powers, and he gets a lead. Basically, he discovers that she's no longer possessed. Speaking of which, I feel like possession in this movie is just one element that maybe didn't need to be there. So yeah,
go ahead.
Using his psychic powers, while he's gripping this lady and smacking her around a little bit, he discovers a lead. Like, Space Vampire Lady is no longer possessing this lady's body. However, he gets a physical description from like accessing the lady he's holding's like memories. And he has the physical description of a large man with a birthmark on his face that is in this criminally insane asylum. So when they exit her apartment, Patrick Stewart was actually present when they first arrived at her apartment. And he's there when they're leaving, too. And so Patrick Stewart's like, can I do anything else for you? And Carlson touches Carlson on the shoulder, at which point Carlson says, do you have a resident at the asylum by this physical description? Patrick Stewart says, of course, follow me this way. He's in solitary confinement.
Oh, yeah.
And when they get into the chamber, there's an orderly there with a sedative. And instead of interrogating the fat man that's strapped down in solitary confinement, they inject Patrick Stewart with the sedative, and he starts screaming.
Oh yeah, he is screaming. He screams a couple of times in this. Like,
yes, dude, his little seizure he has on the floor, that looked like somebody got roughed up. Like that looked like somebody got hurt filming that. Because yeah, Carlson like puts him in a chokehold and wrestles him down to the floor, and Patrick Stewart at this point in time was pretty jacked. He's a pretty big guy too. And Carlson is like, we've been describing him as like short Tommy Lee Jones. So
yeah.
Put that image in your mind. So it's this very short American man straddling this very burly Scottish man. And he wrestles him down to the floor, and he's like literally laying on top of him, bracing his feet against the wall. And they stop for a second. And then Patrick Stewart starts like convulsing underneath him. And he goes on for like 20-30 seconds.
Yeah, like he's gonna die. That's how he's convulsing.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the themes that comes to mind when it comes to the tone of this movie is excess. Things are very excessive in this movie.
Yeah.
Anytime something is done, like whether it be nudity, violence, pyrotechnics, it's always done to the extreme. They take it to 11.
So I think that Carlson is over the top. But I think the Colonel and Dr. Falada are actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, the Colonel in particular is level-headed, and I think it's necessary because so many other cast members are like swinging for the fences. But
yeah,
he's the one that gets probably the most screen time, and he's like the Rock, not the Dwayne the Rock Johnson, but like the Rock in terms of like his stability. Because Carlson's unreliable and fidgety. Bukowski is rattled and fucked up. Falada is clearly an evil fucking man, but Kane is like the straight shooter.
So I was watching this movie, and I had to rewind it a couple of times to watch this one scene. But I think it's either right before we find her or we go to the girl's apartment, or directly after the Patrick Stewart part, where the Colonel is like, we have to find her. Like she's taking different forms, and he's kind of looking up at the ceiling, or almost like he's looking up at space, and he's kind of whispering to himself. He's like, we have to find her. She's out there somewhere. We have to find her. And I was watching it, and I'm like, oh my god, that was exactly Oliver Platt in Year One. When he takes them to the holiest of holies, he's He's like, how did it happen? He's like, fiery vapors this, and he's look, it's identical. Like I want to, you're gonna have to rent year one, or it's on Netflix. Like if you put the two scenes together, it's identical. He's doing the exact same thing. He's the same tone and just looking up towards something vague. He could be looking at the sky or the ceiling. But
to quote my cousin Vinny, the same, identical, the same. It's funny. I'm wondering if like Oliver Platt, did he watch this and just like that one little scene? Like, oh, I can make that funny. But rewatch it. I've got the timestamp for you. It's at about an hour and like 50 seconds in. He's in an office and there's just one other person with him. Go back because it's on Prime. So okay,
go check it out.
I'll do that. But did you want to walk us through Patrick Stewart's interrogation? Because I know you like Patrick Stewart, so I'll let you have this one.
So they realize that she has basically possessed the body of Xavier here, and he's on the slab, and they've hit him with some kind of tranquilizer, and they're about to hit him. They tell the sidekick like, "Hey, we need 3 more of these," and they're about to inject him. The lady's voice, the space girl's voice, comes through Patrick Stewart. She's like, "That won't be necessary," and then basically she's got Carlson in a trance where he's seeing Patrick Stewart, but it's her, and she's like kind of sucking him in, and you're watching it, and you're like, is he gonna kiss her? Because if he starts kissing her, he's kissing Patrick Stewart, and it takes a really long time, but it's a great build-up. You're just like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And then ultimately, he does start making out, and then the Colonel and the other guy pull him off.
Like, whoa! Like, that doesn't seem warranted.
No. And she's like, "Oh, that bitch! She's still in there." And so they hit her again, I believe. Yeah. And this is where Patrick Stewart starts screaming again, like hardcore.
Oh, he's a good screamer. I didn't know that until I saw this.
Yeah. And then at this point, she doesn't. Does she leave his body at this point?
Yeah, we get some poltergeist action here.
Yeah.
So that familiar blue swirling light effect happens.
Think Ghostbusters.
Oh, I'm pretty sure Don Dykstra worked on that movie too. Ghostbusters for sure, though, with the swirling lights. The I Believe in Magic sequence in Ghostbusters, when all of New York becomes haunted and all the purple shooting stars are going through the city.
Yeah,
just same scene but blue instead of purple. Carlson and Patrick Stewart they grapple. Before he makes out with him, we get like an extended half-minute scene of him just shouting in Patrick Stewart's face, "Let me go! Just let me go!"
Yeah, he is so over the top. Yeah,
it's great. I love his sweaty face too. It's like he's probably dripping sweat all over Patrick Stewart.
He looks more like Bruce Dickinson than he does Tommy Lee Jones, I think. Because he's the same height as Bruce Dickinson, who's 5'4", I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so she kind of gets out of his body there, and what happens?
This is where they take Patrick Stewart back up into the helicopter. Also,
this was a cool.
Yeah, it was a cool scene, but overly ambitious.
Yeah, very much.
When Patrick Stewart, when the blue light show goes off in the asylum, our British Egg Shen dies. Off screen, He's just in the room when it's happening, and I guess he has a heart attack. He's like,
he tries to give him CPR, and he's like, I think his neck's broken.
He just dies off screen. This is a theme that pops up towards the later portions of this movie. So they load everyone up onto the helicopter. So we have that guy's corpse, we have Patrick Stewart, and Kane and Carlson all in a helicopter leaving the asylum, headed back to London. We get a report that some shit is going down in London. Mm-hmm. But when we're in this helicopter, some trippy shit happens. We get a mannequin head, or a prosthetic head, a life casting basically, of Patrick Stewart and British Egg Shen And we get, I think it was filmed in reverse and maybe upside down also. Oh, I mean, I'm thinking through how the effect could have been done. I'm pretty sure it was filmed in reverse and maybe backwards.
Yeah.
Basically, blood is being drawn out of every pore in both of their faces, but like off, like at a horizontal angle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the blood pools in midair into just a clump of blood. And then after this very long drawn-out sequence, all the blood pools into the shape of the space vampire lady. She says Carlson's name and then falls apart into just a pool of blood.
Yeah,
so,
pretty gross.
The way I'm describing it doesn't really doesn't do justice to how the effect was achieved. It was a really cool idea. I don't think it was done that well, but it was a really cool idea.
I think you could say that about pretty much the whole movie. Like they tried really hard. It looks okay, but it doesn't look great. But this was probably, aside from the opening shots of the spaceship, this is my other favorite scene.
Well, what makes it special is that I don't think there's another movie in existence that has that particular effect, or it attempts to render that particular image. It's very unique in that sense, and it's just to intensify, I guess, the psychic torment that Carlson is feeling. It's like he's being drawn to this lady, and he can't seem to get over it. In addition to that, I think this is also when he confesses that his little plan on the shuttle did not go according to plan. Like, I guess he was so enraptured with her that he kind of self-sabotaged, and the reason why destroying the shuttle didn't work the way he wanted it to is because he couldn't trust himself to do it, basically. So he reveals that he is truly unreliable as our hero.
Yeah, he's very unreliable. We'll learn a little bit later too.
Yeah. And I think this is when we get a radio call in the helicopter from the BBC.
Yes.
That London is literally on fire.
From the BBC, yes. And there's something that's happening in the meanwhile. One of the guards has come back, and he's come to confront Dr. British guy, old British guy.
Falada? Falafel.
Doctor. I want to say falafel.
You can call him Falafel if you want.
Dr. Falafel. So he comes up and he's like, Dr. Falafel, it's time to go do something. He's like, just give me one moment. And he's like, he knows that this is a vampire, this is a space vampire. And it cuts away. And this is where we get the Patrick Stewart scene. And this is when the BBC calls, basically. And then I think this is where they call Dr. Falada.
Yeah, this is one of the most hackneyed uses of exposition I've ever seen.
This was my favorite quote from the whole movie. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was his cadence or just what he's saying, but I had to look up the script because I couldn't find the quote. I had to look up the script and take a screenshot of it because it was just so good. And I'd like to recite it here for you now, if possible. So he's telling him that he's killed it. And that's what we go back to, is that there's something we forgot to mention, which is the that spear, the spear axe thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Dr. Falada's vampire killing tool that he just happens to have. They have that, and then he's like, I killed one of the transformed ones. And they ask, well, how did you kill him? The old way, Carlson. A leaded metal shaft penetrating not through the heart, but through the energy center, 2 inches below the heart. Not steel, but leaded iron. I just thought it was so funny. Yeah, he's very matter-of-fact about it. Like, because that,
but
everybody knows that. Jeez.
Everybody knows that. It's a very Van Helsing kind of move. He's like, but through the energy center, 2 inches below the heart. Like, we don't learn that in the movie, that they have an energy center 2 inches below the heart, and not steel, but leaded iron is what he uses. Not steel.
Mm-hmm.
two-headed iron.
Yeah, but he again happens to have some medieval weapon of some sort that he just has in his office, which I don't think is actually his office. I think it's the UK NASA.
I actually, something else is on this screenshot from the script that I didn't pick up when I was watching the movie. Dr. Falafel says, "It is my belief that the vampires of legend came from creatures such as these, perhaps even these very creatures."
Yeah.
So his theory is that maybe these guys actually spawned vampires.
No, it's a very familiar storytelling concept. Aliens as opposed to like werewolves or vampires. But that scene, what bothered me about it, I mean, his delivery is great. What really bothers me about it is that this is all stuff that could have been shown to us that just wasn't. We just like pan down. Yeah, we just like tilt down and we see the corpse of one of the male vampires just in the room with him, and he explains everything that he did over a radio. It's like, why couldn't we have just seen that?
Because they'd have to explain, like we would have to know that the energy center is 2 inches below the heart. Well, actually, no, they could have shown that. Like, he could have stabbed him in the heart several times. And it's like, it's not doing anything. And he stabs again, and it was actually lower. And he's like, oh,
yeah,
I found it. Yeah, totally.
You know, it could have been a gripping action horror sequence, but no, we just cut back to the aftermath, and our main cast of heroes are still in the helicopter, very far away, coming back to London.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
London is a shitstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is where things get batshit crazy, as if they haven't already.
I had a legit laugh out loud in one of these scenes, but we can wait.
So the helicopter returns to the city, and we get it was some sort of miniature city that they use for like the main like establishing shots of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the whole city's on fire. There's a massive riot going on. There's streaks of blue light flying all over the place, explosions, mass hysteria. Again, Ghostbusters. So apparently the space vampire plague has gone unchecked and has spread like exponentially. While our main cast of heroes were away, you know, trying to track down the one lady vampire. I guess the two male vampires, who again we didn't know reassembled themselves, caused all sorts of mayhem that again we did not see. So by the time we get to London, it's in complete chaos, and the entire city is just erupting in flames.
It just reminded me of like a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, very much so. It turns into a zombie film in the last half hour.
Yeah.
So we get a funny scene where Kane and Carlson like land on the roof of, I guess it's supposed to be like Strategic Command Center or something, where the Prime Minister is, and we get this funny scene where a secretary asks them if they want tea in the middle of this crisis.
That's funny.
I feel like that's a very British thing. After all the World War I and II, the Brits are kind of they're kind of known for their mentality of like, oh, carry on, you know, like, oh, the whole city's on fire. It's like, well, we'll make it. But then they get taken to a back room where the Prime Minister is, and he says, "Oh, excuse me a sec," and we get a shot of him in silhouette, grabbing someone and like embracing them, and then the blue lights start flashing. So our heroes are like, well,
shit. They just walk out. They don't even. They do not emote. They just walk right out.
No reaction whatsoever. They're just like, well, this bunker's fucked, and they just head right back to the helicopter and leave.
Well, it's actually a funny scene because he comes out and he's like, oh yes, right, yes, okay, yeah. Excuse me for a moment, and then he leaves. He's like, Miss. Whatever the secretary, can you come with me? Moneypenny, come with me. So she goes in and does not shut the door, and they kind of just look at each other. Do you remember that scene in Rush Hour 2 where Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker go to Don Cheadle's restaurant, and he's like asking about the counterfeit money, and he pulls out his safe, and Don Cheadle kind of looks back at them like, I'm about to punch in the numbers, look away. And they both look away, and then they just look right back over.
Yeah,
that's what they do basically. They go in, they just kind of look at each other like, okay, let's just stick our heads in here. They did a horrible job closing the door. And this is where the secretary goes back behind. So I think the prime minister was like, I got to suck the skin off somebody. Oh, yes, right. And then this is where, yeah, she's getting the skin sucked off of her. And they just look at each other and they're like, all right, well, let's leave.
No, I thought it was pretty funny, just the timing of it.
It is a really funny scene, unintentionally, I do believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're getting out of there, and this is where they split up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they get to the quarantine. They get outside the quarantine zone, so they use the helicopter to get to, like, the British military has set up like a quarantine around all of London. There's like a military station set up there with a wall and like a checkpoint and everything, and they managed to talk their way into the military camp. And this is where they split up. Carlson is basically completely on the space vampire's leash. Like, he just can't get over it anymore. It's funny, actually. There's a scene in a tent where the general who's in command of all the military proceedings, he's explaining to the two of them that, this situation is getting out of control, and we're discussing like a thermonuclear option just in case. And they're like, "Oh, well, fuck." I mean, I guess the deadline he sets for them is like 3 hours. It's like, so within 3 hours, we're going to bomb London, and that'll be that. But what I thought was really funny here, and I took note of it especially because it was just such a small thing that was so easy to overlook. I think Kane asked the general about the spaceship, because at some point, somebody mentioned, I think it was Bukowski, mentioned that the spaceship is coming into Earth orbit, and it'll be there within 2 days or something. So that's like a ticking clock element. But the movie completely forgot about it. Yeah. And I feel like this was an intentional, like, humorous moment that was inserted in there, because Kane asked the general, "What about the giant spaceship?" And the general just looks at him and goes, "What?" Like, he's like, "What are you talking about?"
That is the least of our worries.
He's like, "I know there's a big giant spaceship up there. What am I supposed to do about it?"
What are you supposed to do about it?
But it's just funny because the movie had not mentioned that in probably 40 minutes.
I forgot about it.
Exactly, so did I. And it was only him mentioning that was, oh shit, yeah, I forgot.
So basically the end of Ghostbusters is starting to happen.
Carlson takes off, and he's looking for the girl.
Yeah,
and Kane, though, is looking for Dr. Fallada.
And this is where I had a legitimate laughed out loud. Kane has got a car that was given to him by the general, begrudgingly, I do believe.
No, he just steals it.
He steals it? Okay. Well, I remember he's like, he gives him a gun. That's what it was. He's just like, no, I don't want to give you that. And he's like, give it to me. He's like, okay. So yeah, he's in the car and he's driving, and there's people running towards him. So he has to kind of like watch the foot traffic. They're all running towards him, and then a zombie is running towards him, and he hits it. And it just goes to pieces. Like, you can see the pieces like fly apart.
It's the RoboCop Meltman, but less gooey.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I laughed at it. It's timestamp 1 hour 36 minutes 34 seconds. If you want to go back and see it. I thought it was pretty funny. But yeah, he's looking out for Falafel, and Carlson's looking for Zool. And where is Falafel at?
He is back at UK NASA. He's just in the office in the same room with where he killed the male vampire.
Yeah.
With his iron stake.
What happens with him at this scene? I don't even remember now.
So this scene I thought was really good, because Dr. Falafel really puts in a good performance here. It's a chilling conversation where Kane is like, "Where is everyone?" And Falafel's like, "Well, they're dead like everyone else." And Kane just... Again, this is what, loose thread number 3, 4, 5.
Oh yeah, it's like number 10.
Kane asks about Bukowski, who, again, I thought was one of the more interesting characters in the whole movie. And Falafel just says, "Oh, dead like the rest of them." So Bukowski died off screen. That's nice. Thanks, movie. So basically, over the course of this very slow, tense conversation, we come to realize that Dr. Falafel made out with a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
and he's sweating profusely, and he's keeping his cool, but you can tell there's something wrong with him. And he comes at Kane, and Kane ends up shooting him, and we get this weird makeup effect on Falafel, and he slumps over, and then a blue comet comes out of his back and flies out into the night sky. By the way, there's a giant blue pillar, like every major blockbuster in the past decade. There's a giant blue pillar of light involved. And so right before he dies, though, he has a pretty cool line where he just very calmly says, like, "Well, here I go," and there I go.
So somebody actually mentions it. I think it is Carlson. They're standing there looking at it and like, what's happening? And basically, it's a super Shang Tsung. It's like all these vampires are basically sucking the souls out of people. But I don't understand.
It has begun.
Yeah, I don't understand how that's happening. That's where I was kind of checked out of the movie at this point. I'm like, I don't know what's happening anymore.
This isn't your fault. This is the movie. This is one of the more exposition heavy moments that again could have been presented more cleanly. Before they leave the camp, Carlson and Kane are looking off into the distance, and they see the blue pillar of light. Carlson uses his magic psychic powers that he just has for reasons to explain to Kane that the male vampires are collecting the life force, the energy from all the zombies, which that's what the blue comets and stuff in the sky are. He explains them as being like souls, basically. So they're taking the souls from all the zombies. So the males collect the souls, and the lady vampire is the one who beams them up to the spaceship that's in orbit. So the big claw ship from the opening that is now in Earth orbit, she's using that pillar of light she's the conduit.
Yeah.
So yeah, wherever that blue pillar of light is where she is.
Okay, so at this point, Carlson meets up with her.
Yeah.
And I think he meets up with her, and they are both naked somehow. Like I like kind of looked down for a minute. I'm like, oh, this is going on. Then I looked up, like, oh, they're both naked. Like, oh, something's happening in the movie. And they're just like, yeah, just kind of making out, and Colonel is looking for him, basically.
Yeah, Colonel leaves UK NASA, and he takes off on foot. So he has the stake and his pistol, and he's just jogging along, like dodging zombies left and right. And by the way, the zombie makeup is not great.
No.
Some of it's okay, but most of it's bad. But like the staging of the riot sequences is actually pretty cool. Like it really does look like a city that's completely fucked.
Oh no, it looks legit. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. And basically, he's doing like the Night of the Living Dead or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, run away from a big crowd of people thing. He caps a zombie in the brain, and then he finally gets to the steps of the cathedral, and one of our Tommy Hilfiger models, one of the male vampires, just like gets up into the frame. By the way, the steps of the cathedral, it's pretty cool looking. It was a really neat visual, I thought, anyway.
The doors were giant. They were huge.
The doors were giant, but what stood out to me was the pile of bodies. Like,
oh yeah.
Like the entirety of the steps is just covered in human zombie bodies. It looks pretty cool because it's like
some of them are moving too.
Yeah, some of them were mannequins, some of them were actors, but it just it's a good visual reminder that it's like, hey, whatever is going on is probably over here because that's where all the bodies are. So yeah, this male vampire gets up and is like sucking Ghostbusters ghosts into its stomach, so a whole bunch of blue light is flying into his stomach. He doesn't really regard Kane as a threat. He just kind of looks at him. He says something really goofy like, it'll be less terrifying if you just come to me, but he has like this weird audio effect over his voice that just sounds like that voice doesn't go with that face.
Yeah.
And then it's actually pretty simple. Kane just stabs him with the stake, and he turns into a bat monster for like 2 shots, and then he poof turns into a cloud, and apparently he's dead.
Yeah, so this is so we get explained by Space Girl what's happening, and he's like, "Why did you guys come here?" And they're like, "We basically harvest your energy or harvest your life force." Ha!
I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean to do that. And he's like, "But where did you come from?" She's like, "From your mind. I'm your manifestation of someone you want." And I, I don't see how that works. Because I feel like they have to have some kind of tangible, like, person to be able to take over their body as a bat. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, the rules of this particular story are very flimsy. That's why I say there's a lot of disparate elements, a lot of loose threads that I feel like maybe just didn't need to be there. Like the possession thing, I would say either go all in on that and have it be they don't have an actual body, they just inhabit someone, or don't have it at all, because it just complicates things way too much.
We have zombies, aliens, demons, and vampires. Like it's all just kind of
It's all
twisted
wrapped
up.
and connected.
Yeah, just somehow. But yeah, so basically she's supposed to be some hot chick from his brain, or what he would consider ideal.
Basically says that, like, and I think actually he says this before he gets to her, like when he's explaining it to Kane. It's like in order to take the energy from another being, they need to know that being. So they need to bang, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did interpret it as like they take on the shape that whatever civilization or creature that they're trying to take the energy from would find appealing, I guess.
So yeah, they're making out pretty hardcore, and this is where we get our cock block.
Carlson!
Because the colonel's up above, and he's like,
Carlson!
he says it like 7 times.
Carlson!
Carlson! Carlson! But he's got the spear with him, and he chucks it down to him, and he stabs her in the back, and she.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. Carlson's making out with Space Vampire Lady, and again, it takes like 30 attempts of yelling his name to get him to look up, but he finally does. He finally looks up at Kane, who, by the way, the lady and Carlson are in the basement of the cathedral, and there's just convenient little hole so the blue light can go up through the ceiling, and Kane is like looking down on them and shouting down at them, and finally, when Carlson looks up, he like reaches out with one hand, and Kane throws the stake down at him, and he. Good catch. I mean, it's got a gigantic handle, so that helps. But he catches the stake as it's falling, and then he puts it behind her, and he runs her through from behind. And then I didn't realize it until there's a wide angle of it, but he ran himself through too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's supposed to be like a grand sacrifice or something, but then we get like the most rushed ending I think I've ever seen. Like maybe ever.
I'm like, wait, it's over? That
was
it?
Yeah, like boom, credits.
That's it.
So he stabs the two of them. So they're both impaled on the stake, and then they both look up and they zip up with the blue light into the spaceship. The claws of the spaceship close, and it takes off back to Halley's Comet. Credits. Credits immediately.
We have so many questions unanswered.
Cock block to save the planet.
Maybe he gets to bang her now. I don't know.
Well, she does say, and this makes no fucking sense, you're one of us. It's like, nice. No, he's very clearly not, though. Like, he was an astronaut. Well, maybe he is now. I mean, it seemed like they were okay when they went up, and the spaceship's moving, so whatever's guiding it is okay, but yeah, they just take off.
Yeah. So why did you recommend this one? Just because it was on Prime and you'd seen it?
Well, I know Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an important film to you, and Tobe Hooper, same director. Tobe Hooper had a kind of a rough stretch at this point in his career. In fact, most of his career has been more down than up, I'd say.
Well, what was it? Poltergeist came out before this, correct?
Yes, Poltergeist was a big hit, and I think it's a pretty solid movie.
I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, it's good times.
I've heard that.
I don't know.
I've heard that.
I feel like this one, like it's not a strong recommend for me at all. If you enjoy laughing at movies and trying to wrap your head around what the fuck the movie's trying to do, if you can get yourself in that mindset, it's a lot of fun. But mostly, I just wanted you to see something else that Tobe Hooper had done, and also get the Canon Group involved in our podcast, because anything by them is kind of worth a look. And also, it seems to be kind of a theme in a lot of the movies we've been covering. An example of a movie where a director is given more resources than they probably should have been. Nothing But Trouble was like the first instance of one of those that we looked at, where it's like, this is Dan Aykroyd unchained. And The Dark Backward, for sure, this is a writer turned director who probably got more money and more creative leeway than he should have had. And this was Tobe Hooper getting free reign on a massive, like, not a massive, but a very high budget film with a shitty script, but he was given a lot of creative freedom that very clearly didn't translate to the most cohesive product.
Yeah, no, he didn't. I think it's shot really well. I think it, like, if you just look at it, it's a good movie. The problem
audio too. Like, the soundtrack is magnificent in a lot of ways.
I just think the structure and the loose end, like, we introduce a lot of threads, and they don't go anywhere. It's like you're running on a path, and then you like, oh, I'm gonna take this way, and you're like, oh, okay, that ended quick. Let me get back on this main trail here. Let me take this up now.
Yeah, there's so many harebrained storytelling decisions. Like, the biggest one to me is London being on fire without us knowing. Like, we come back and okay, so the whole city's been erupting into chaos and we didn't even know about it. And Bukowski dying off screen, Dr. Fallada not only killing one of the three, there's only 3 vampires in this whole movie, killing one of the 3 off screen, and also Dr. Fallada being making out with a zombie. We never saw that either. So there's a lot of things that's just like, why didn't we touch that? And
I'm gonna look at who edited this movie.
Like I said, Tobe Hooper had kind of a rough time around this time, because this was part of a 3-picture deal he did with Canon. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Invaders from Mars were the other 2 movies he did, and both of them were not well received.
Ooh, wow.
A lot of it could just be creative sensibilities, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a very strange movie. It's not for everyone, because it has that Evil Dead 2 vibe to it. I haven't even seen the second one, because I know the gore is there. Like, it's a very brutally violent movie, but it has that Looney Tunes feel to it too. And the production design is also off the wall. Like, it's very clear. It looks almost like a Terry Gilliam movie at times. It's interesting to look at for sure, but the tone of it is just bouncing off the walls. It's all over the place. So it's like, I'm sure he was happy with what he made, but your average audience goer, like your average film goer, would probably just be like, what the fuck am I watching?
So the editor for this movie is John Grover. He did For Your Eyes Only, Lifeforce, The Living Daylights, License to Kill.
A lot of James Bond movies.
Yeah, and then the one that stuck out to me was Labyrinth.
Oh, interesting. So clearly he works in the UK.
Yeah,
that's what that tells me.
I just don't think that maybe he spent too much time on set, on like with the set production and the makeup effects, that they just didn't shoot enough to tell the story. Well, this is kind of what happened.
Again, I took a glance at the Wikipedia article for the movie, and apparently there were several actors who reported having worked on the film who never got some of their scenes filmed. And again, there's a lot of space footage that got cut. So maybe they needed to negotiate or something. Maybe certain scenes were paid more attention than they needed to be, and it put them behind schedule or something. Parts of it definitely feel rushed, for sure.
It just seems like we're watching, like, like a cut version of like a Marvel movie, and like, well, what was that about? I'm missing something from there. What? I don't understand that. And it's just cut down for like theatrical release. And then if you go watch the 4-hour extended version, like, oh, it explains so much more. In this case, there might be deleted scenes that were missing, but also scenes that were never actually filmed. And they're like, just fucking put it together.
But yeah, like I said, not a strong recommend, but I just thought it would be fun to take a look at, just to take a look at.
It was an okay watch. I don't hate it. I won't watch it again, but yeah, I liked seeing the makeup effects. That was kind of a fun thing to take a look at. I'm like, yeah, these aren't that great.
Well, the optical effects to me were the real standout. It's like we're still kind of doing things in camera, and it's pretty impressive for its day. But anyway,
Yeah,
so that was Lifeforce. Hopefully we'll catch up on cinema again real time soon.
Yeah, I already know what you get to watch.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't wait. There will be spoilers.
Until next time.